All right, Sam Stefano, we have very special guests from Alfa Romeo on this week. Vita Marina joining us. We are talking General F1 with Vita. Vita, welcome onto the podcast this week.
Hi, guys. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, we are super excited to have you this week. But Vita, why don't you give the listeners a little bit of a background on your kind of role in the team at Alfa Romeo and kind of, what you focus on week to week and within the team?
So currently I work as a factory performance engineer, but I just changed into this role like a month ago. Before that, I worked for around 2-3 years in design office in stress department, working on different bodywork parts design.
Awesome. Yeah. And so I think I saw that you kind of came up through the Ferrari academy as well, right? There was some work that you had done there to kind of help give you that experience to get into Alfa Romeo. So kind of maybe give our listeners a little bit of how did you even get to Alfa Romeo? What did you do? I mean, it sounds like, I think I read that it was as simple as you reaching out to HR, but you had to have had some experience in the background. You didn't just reach out to HR and say, hey, I'm interested in being, in this position. How did you get here?
Well, it started long time ago. I think I started my, education in technical area right after the high school. And I did the appropriate university with mechanical engineering degree. And then throughout the whole studies, I was just always trying to keep in mind that at the end I want to work in Formula One. So yeah, actually how I joined the Ferrari Academy was, as you just described, I knew that they had this program for graduate, and I saw, I think on LinkedIn, it was May or June, so kind of towards the end of my studies, I saw that they were looking for another batch of fresh meat. So yeah, I prepared a really nice CV, nice, as good as I could make it.
Absolutely.
And I sent an email, and I got a reply and got a call for a Skype interview in the beginning. And then they had another, I don't remember now, 4 or 5 levels of testing. There were some written tests, some additional interviews, some how's it called? Assessment center, where we had to travel to Maranello and do some additional checks. So the whole process took several months, but then at the end, several of us got accepted. I think we started around several hundred, and then only maybe 10, 15 got in.
Yeah, I mean, so we did our homework. I saw that there was, I saw your background. So we definitely did our homework on you before we joined, but really, really cool that background from you. When you were at the Ferrari Academy, how did you overlap with any of the drivers that are on the current circuit? I know Mick Schumacher came up through the Ferrari Academy. During your time there, were you kind of in the similar time frame as some of the other drivers on track? I know Giovinazzi was a Ferrari Academy driver.
So I was there when, which season it was, 2016, 17. We had Kimi and Sebastian Vettel in the car. And I think Antonio just was joining the team back then. So yeah, since I was working there also in design department, there was not too much contact between designers of bodywork parts or suspension with the driver, but they were always coming to the office, and especially Sebastian, he was very active and friendly, and every time he was coming in, he was going through the whole office, making some jokes, discussing the steering wheel and some adjustments that he needed to do for his car, especially before the beginning of the season, because we were working mostly November, December, January. That's the time when most of the development is happening.
Vita, you started with Ferrari, and you through your background, I saw you were a big F1 fan growing up. Now, were you a Ferrari fan growing up? Was that the team that you always wanted to work for, or was that just kind of the one that had an opening and you jumped at it?
Yeah, I'm a 90s baby, so I'm a Schumacher fan.
You and Stefano both.
Your heart must have broke when you saw the Niki Lauda crash or when you saw Charles Leclerc crash Niki Lauda's car. I was going to say, not the Niki Lauda crash. Your heart must have dropped.
Well, I wasn't very surprised.
Is that because of who was the driver, or because of how old the car is?
No comment. No, so yeah, I think I started watching Formula One since I was like 4 years old, basically since I realized what the TV was for. And then, yeah, I think as a kid, it's just fascinating even before you understand what it actually is, no?
Yeah, I think I share a similar experience to that, Vita. Growing up, my dad is from Italy, so he's a very big Ferrari fan too. So I think we share the same experience, although it's a little bit different here in the States. You know, back when Schumi was in the seat, you didn't get to see all the races broadcast here. So we definitely made some leaps and bounds as far as broadcasting goes here. So I'm really happy to see the sport growing as much as it is in the United States, because it wasn't always this way.
So you had only some selected races shown?
Some selected races, mostly a lot of taped races coming back. We didn't really get to see them live very much, but it definitely didn't have the same star power and grandeur in the United States back then as it does now. F1 has gone through sort of leaps and bounds as far as popularity goes in the United States. We had, popular years decades and decades ago, but then it sort of lost its popularity. And then the debacle in Indianapolis in, I believe, '05 or '06 really was not a good look for F1. But ever since then, especially with Texas, F1 has gained a lot of popularity here. And now that we have Miami and soon to be next year, Las Vegas, that's a very good step in the right direction for the sport in the United States. So newer generations of fans definitely have it lucky compared to what some of us 90s babies like me and yourself were going through.
Yeah, I'm really happy to see that it's growing, especially after I think the Netflix series came out. That was a huge
that was a good thing for F1 in the United States.
Because when I was little, Formula One was not popular at all in Russia. We were having live broadcast, but honestly, the amount of people that were following the sport was very low. And for a very long time, we didn't have a track or a race, because also it was not clear how many people would actually join and follow the sport. And then it kind of started improving in the beginning of 2000s, but now it's going backwards again.
As a factory engineer this year, Vita, so obviously mega change this year to the car. 2022 regulations have totally shaken up the field. I mean, we saw a dominant Mercedes for 8 years. They're struggling with porpoising. We've got Ferrari that was always pretty quick, and obviously, they have a great power unit. Alfa Romeo using the Ferrari constructor power unit too. Alfa Romeo is having a fantastic year with 2 new drivers, which I think was a big question mark whenever you have 2 brand new drivers coming onto a team this year. But as a factory engineer, I know you said you had just moved into the role, but where has the team and what has been the biggest challenges you think across the board in general, but that just kind of has puzzled teams? Is it really the porpoising? We hear that so much, but is it really as big of a problem inside the factory, or is it just more of the whole aero and trying to kind of get your head around the regulations, or has there been one area that's just been really a beast for you guys to tackle compared to prior years, or how hard has the regulations really hit the team?
Well, I think it hit everyone in the same way, because we all had to make a new car completely from scratch. I wouldn't say that there was one particular area that was specifically difficult. It was just a very intense 2021 for everyone at the factory. Absolutely uncomparable to the previous years.
Why is that?
And we had, because of the amount of extra work that we had to do. And
in preparation for 2022.
Yeah, because the car was in design for almost a full year, and we needed to do our homework. And I think the results this year show that we did our homework quite well. There was no particular concern about having new drivers, because the driver selection was, I think, 1 point for us. Yeah, it's, there is usually no magic involved unless you have some particular loop in the regulation. But at the moment you see that it's just about teams getting all the right details and putting everything together. And I think that's just what we did.
So it seemed that this year, maybe more than ever, it's kind of a week by week process, like a learning process for each team, trying to unlock more speed, handling those porpoising issues. Now, we hear a lot about upgrades. from your perspective, are those upgrades kind of planned out over the course of the year, or do you see the performance on a Sunday and you say, okay, we need to work on this, and you plan your upgrades around the performance? Or is it more of like, okay, we're going to bring a specific upgrade to a race in 4 weeks?
It's a combination of both. Of course, just purely for design, production, logistics reasons, you need to have a plan of when do you want to release an update for the car. But of course, it's not like we're deciding now for what is going to be done in end of season. We need to see where the main limitations are, and after every race, we evaluate where we stand and how good are our estimations for the upcoming races and how is the correlation, and based on that we decide in which direction to go. It's both.
So on the topic of upgrades, we talk a lot about them. We're kind of, I wouldn't say obsessed with them, but we very, very much focus on the upgrades on a week to week basis, and we pay attention to all the Twitter chatter about who's bringing what to what race. You know, as someone who focuses on them for a specific team, are you kind of paying attention to what other teams are bringing and wondering, ooh, is Ferrari bringing a specific upgrade? Oh, maybe towards the midfield cars you're more competing with, you know, is a McLaren bringing an upgrade? Is AlphaTauri bringing an upgrade? Or are you specifically focused on what your team's doing and nothing else really matters about what other teams are bringing?
Well, let's say we plan our work based on our performance. Of course, we compare to what the other teams are doing, and we know when the information is available that they're planning something for the next race. We also check when the weekend starts, what have they brought. Every team is doing exactly the same. But yeah, you don't gain lap time by understanding, by just looking at the others. No. Of course, everyone in Formula One is looking for some interesting solutions that someone else has come up with. But our main focus is, of course, our car and understanding it properly, and because purely copying never helps. It's never a good idea.
So Vita, Alfa Romeo pretty closely tied with Ferrari because of the power unit, right? So Ferrari, I think, has their Ferrari car, Alfa Romeo, and Haas are the three Ferrari power units on the grid this year. Everyone else is basically Mercedes, other than the Honda engines for Red Bull and AlphaTauri, and I think Alpine has been still using Renault. But we hear sometimes that a team like Ferrari is planning an engine upgrade, or they are going to unlock the engine and say, hey, we've been in a safe mode, and maybe for this race, we think we're going to unlock some more pace. How much of what they can do to the engine is like same thing that you guys can do to your Ferrari engine? Is it basically the exact same power unit? So if you see data points from Ferrari and Charles and Carlos saying, hey, you know, we heard rumors that they unlocked or they came out of safe mode for Imola, and they're going to race it and see if they have some reliability from the engine at a different setting. Are you able to like kind of replicate that in the next race and say, hey, it looks like they've got some pretty good data on Ferrari or on Haas on their power units, and we are running the same power unit? And how much of that do you guys like look at other teams' data that have similar, you know, maybe similar front wing end plates, similar rear wing, similar power units that you guys take and say, hey, this data looks pretty good, we're going to use that?
So we're all in the same conditions. We have the same units. We have Ferrari team supporting us every event. So whatever is available for them is available for us. There is no such special, investigation necessary. Yeah, we're basically all running in the same conditions.
Interesting.
Of course, it's interesting to compare, knowing that we have the same power unit. What are then the other differences between cars? But as I said before, it is interesting, but it's not the main priority when we're working on the updates or trying to understand the difference in performance.
Yeah, and so one thing we've talked a lot this year is kind of how this like new fuel has impacted like how these power units are kind of running. We've seen a ton of reliability issues across all different types of power units so far this year. I think Valtteri had one in Saudi Arabia. The same one I think was Fernando Alonso in Saudi Arabia, Max Verstappen obviously in Bahrain, Max Verstappen again in Australia, almost Checo in Miami. It seems to be kind of a power unit issue with Red Bull, but like, do you think that there's something going on with like obviously new fuel hit the tanks this year, and so many teams in the first few races just lost power towards the end. Do you think that was more related to one issue or another? And obviously, don't speculate across the teams, but just in general, like, is that something that you think is just the nature of a new car and maybe new fuel tanks and new loads, or is it something that, is a little bit more common?
I think that reliability issues in the beginning of the season, when there is such a huge regulation change, is more a generic issue rather than something particularly related to one unit, to one item. I think all the teams are struggling in their own way. It's not necessarily that everyone has the same issue. Maybe on TV it appears like something similar, but it's not given. So as you said, there is no need to speculate what happened with whom. But it's a prototype car racing. We're in race 5, 6 now. I think engineers in other teams are also still figuring out some design concepts, some maybe production issues that they had, or some miscorrelation between data. So I think this is just business as usual, unfortunately, for beginning of the season in such a new age.
Got it. And were you on call in the factory? What's it like during a race weekend for you? So like Miami, for example, Mother's Day weekend in the States. Were you working in the factory that weekend? Were you in Miami? Did you get to go to the Miami, or so you're in the factory on call?
Yeah, we're at the factory. It's it's a night race for us.
Yeah,
because
so
of the
late.
time difference. Yeah, we're staying until quite late. We have like a mission control room here, like all the other teams, and we have engineers from performance, from aero, vehicle dynamics that are supporting the racetrack team. And yeah, basically we're here all the time, starting from Thursday until end of race, providing some additional analysis, providing extra support to the race team, and doing the same hours, maybe in the dark.
So back to the upgrades a little bit. So we hear a lot about drivers comparing themselves to their teammate and being in the same car. Specifically with upgrades, we're seeing this year, and I think we've seen it in the past, maybe one driver gets an upgrade that the other one doesn't. That has to cause some sticky situations sometimes, maybe back at the facility, who's going to get it. What kind of goes into that decision of who gets what upgrade, maybe who doesn't get it that week, why they get it? And are these drivers really driving the same car at the beginning of the year, like we're told they are, or are they kind of different setups based on who the driver is, maybe their weight? What kind of goes into those decisions?
Well, there can be some small differences, but they're really minor. This is nothing that you could see on the car. In general, yes, the drivers are driving the same car, and if we have a good idea for an update, and we try to bring it as fast as possible in a quantity that is as high as possible. If it's not possible, then then we have to make a decision. But there is never any drama, friction.
So it's more of a quantity thing. Like we're able to produce enough for both drivers. It's not, Valtteri will do better with this update, so we're going to give it to him.
Usually, we plan to put update on both cars. If it's not possible, like it sometimes happens. At the moment, it's not happening, but I remember like a couple of years ago we were in this situation. But it's not a big drama, not like a fight.
So you're telling us that the drive survives a little dramatized compared to the actual real world?
No, it's completely and 100% true. Everything that you see there.
Love it.
So if I'll put it this way, Sam, I feel like if both drivers were getting the same upgrade, then we would have seen a Joe Granu picture of him in the water bearing it all and seeing his tukis out in a nice lake in the middle of the United States. But it sounds like we were only fortunate to get Valtteri's picture of, or what is going around as Valtteri Bottas, I guess I could say, which was pretty funny. What's it like having Valtteri on the team? Personally, I always kind of felt bad for him at Mercedes. Playing the second fiddle to Lewis Hamilton must have been absolutely brutal, but he just seems so much happier and at home on Alfa Romeo, and he's been having a fantastic year so far. He had a little bit of an error in Miami, and he had that unfortunate luck in Jeddah, which was out of his control, but he just seems like It's been honestly sneaky. I'm not a Mercedes fan. I'm a big Red Bull fan. Stefano's a big Ferrari fan, and Sam's a big Mercedes fan. We're all Alfa Romeo fans this year, but I was like rooting for Valtteri at Imola to overtake George in that same straight. I was rooting for him to kind of finish ahead of both Lewis and George in Miami. It's like something like you kind of like want to see him succeed, and he's had an awesome car. But what's it been like having him on? He just seems like he's just so much happier here.
He's a great guy to have in the team. Really, I think you can ask anyone here. We're very happy that he joined. He brings great atmosphere with him, great like motivation and mood, and both during the race weekend and outside when he comes to the factory. It's really, really great, like leader for our team this year. It looks like he's enjoying it as well. So that interpretation, I think, is 100% correct from your side. It's been really a pleasure so far. Yeah. We're very excited about him bringing his coffee and gin experience.
So, Vita, speaking of the drivers, from your perspective, do you think there's been any sort of key moments, something where you can pick out and just say, this was sort of a defining moment so far in the season? Something that may have impacted Valtteri and made sure that he's had consistent form, or something where the pace may have picked up, or anything like that?
Well, I think in general, what usually helps, what helps always, is to have a good communication between the driver and the team, and to have good feedback from the driver regarding the car, so that we're speaking the same language and we understand what is needed. And I think for both drivers this season, we've been extremely happy with the level of feedback that they're providing, and also with how they're working with the team, with the simulator, everything. I think that's maybe one of the main reasons why we are progressing at such speed, because we have a really good feedback loop going on.
Vita, you just mentioned communication with your drivers. Sometimes we hear about drivers who are super involved in the process of the car. Like you mentioned, Seb, he's notorious for getting in there, understanding, every nuance of the car. And you hear guys like Daniel Ricciardo who just pretty much just drive it. They don't know much about the mechanics of it or the engineering portion of the car. What's it been like working with Valtteri and Zhao about how involved are they this year in the car, the development of the car, the performance of the car? How much insight are you getting from them on a week-to-week basis, maybe compared to other drivers that you've worked with?
Quite a lot. They are very involved, and they are always saying in which direction they want the car to go. If they're missing something, they're telling us, okay, you need to bring this up, this kind of update, or I'm looking for a specific behavior of the car, and then we know, okay, then we have to organize it. So yeah, this has been very also consistent across drivers, so we know that what both of them are saying is, let's say, true, because we get kind of the same feedback.
Is it easier for you when that's the case, when the drivers are kind of all a part of the process and really diving into the nuance of the car, or is it easier if they're kind of staying out of your business and let you do your job?
No. Of course, we need full involvement. The more consistent it is, and the more, let's say, it's matching in between the two, the better it is for us, because at the end, we can think what we have our tunnel, we have our simulator, we have all our tools with which we predict the performance. But at the end, what matters is what Valtteri and Guanyu can do with the car. So if we can give them what they need, then that's the key to unlocking the speed.
Now, Vita, I want to ask about a recent retiree, because you said that you've had experience working with Kimi Räikkönen at Ferrari. In contrast to Seb, who you said was very involved with the process, with engineering and making sure that everything on the car was up to his standard. The consensus among the F1 crowd is that Kimi is sort of less involved, more removed from the process. Is that, in your experience, a true statement, or was he more involved than what we're led to believe? Because on race day, his nickname is the Iceman, but on race day, he's very animated over the radio. He definitely lets his voice be heard to the team paddock and everything like that. So there are contrasting images of what we see from Kimi and what we're told about Kimi. So in your experience, how can you give us a review of that?
I think Kimi is as involved, or was when he was with us and with Ferrari, was as involved as all the other drivers. He just uses less words.
So he's more of an actions speak louder than words type of guy, Vita. It sounds like he's involved, but he's just as quiet in the factory as he is in front of the cameras. He's not doing an act or a bit in front of the cameras. He is like that in every aspect.
He's just how he is, exactly.
That's how he is.
Very genuine, but it doesn't affect at all the contribution that he made to the team or the level of communication that we had. It's just, his style. Everyone has his own style.
He's one of Stefano's favorites. I mean, then honestly, on social media these days, I've been getting a kick out of it. Everyone seems to be posting the video of all the drivers warming up their tires, and Kimi's just driving straight through down the straight with nothing at all. And it's one of the funny. You see like Max and he's weaving, and then you see like Charles and he's weaving. You see Lewis and he's weaving, and then Kimi right behind him just straight away down the area. It's unbelievable.
I remember that video.
Just shut up. I know what I'm doing.
So when you grew up as a Ferrari fan, you were a Schumacher fan, but were you also a Kimi fan too, or did you like? Were you just like almost like the people who love Max? They respect Checo, but they are rooting for Max every race, and they're not rooting against Checo. But was that the same concept? Like when you were rooting for Michael? Like
no, when I was little, I was only rooting for Schumacher, and then no one else existed.
No one else.
For me. No, that was absolutely clear.
So were you happy that Lewis didn't catch and break his record last year, and the Schumacher World Championship record is still intact?
A bit.
I know.
I have to admit, yes.
Oh yeah.
I know that it's going to happen at some point.
I don't know.
He might retire.
Not this year.
Yeah, it doesn't look like this year, but who knows? You can never count out Mercedes. You can never count out Alfa Romeo. I mean, either, because you guys, this Ferrari power unit is so powerful. It's unbelievable. And I think, we've been talking about it on the podcast lately. It's almost like we're heading into a different season, because the first few tracks were more of like straight line speed, low downforce packages, where the powerful power unit, it just was managing tire deg and making sure that, you had the most powerful unit. But I mean, Imola was a little bit different because of the rain, but now we're heading into some of the technical parts of the season where you have to be really quick. You have to have good downforce, and that power unit of Ferrari has got good pace, and with a good downforce package, probably minimizing tire deg. But kind of shifting gears to that, the tires this year, it seems like that has been a big challenge for these teams, getting them to the right temperatures. So not only did we see bigger tires with wheel covers, now we also have less temperature in the warm-ups, right? The tire blankets are at a lower temperature than they normally are. Is the tires, like, I guess, what is your view on how this has affected, mainly Alfa Romeo, but just the entire grid in terms of all the changes? Like, do you think it was almost too many regulation changes with regards to the tires, too fast? I kind of do. It
is what it is, no?
Yeah.
I mean, if we're already changing everything, it wouldn't help us, I think, too much if we hesitated and then delayed some further updates for another couple of years. I think everyone is dealing with it, and everyone is struggling in their own way. You see across field, some of the struggles are common. Some teams are affected more by tire degradation, some less. At the end, I think these issues are similar on all cars. So it's, as I said before, it's just about who has done their homework better before the season, and who is the fastest now in understanding what is the actual issue that is causing either warm-up or degradation issues, and that's what we're working on.
It's such a funny year because of the regulations, right? They did their job. We say the regulations did their job. They shook up the field, the cost caps. Absolutely. They're making teams be more thoughtful. You don't have the top 3 teams just shoving money into development. It's kind of people being more thoughtful. It's kind of giving racing a little bit more fun. We're seeing a lot of overtakes back and forth. Drivers can follow closely together. What's been your favorite thing that you've watched so far this season? And kind of twofold. It's a 2-part question. So the first part is specifically within like Alfa Romeo, your favorite thing about this season, just in general of you working on the team. And second, as a fan of F1, what has been your favorite thing to look at on track this year?
Yeah, I mean, as a fan of Formula One, I'm extremely enjoying this season. I love to see the amount of actual fights that we have now, the compression of the field, the way we, especially let's say in the maybe third, fourth row, how much competition there is going on. That the midfield is really tight. This is really a pleasure to see. For me personally, I know you're expecting me to say that I have like one particular moment that I really enjoyed. To
Give
be
me
honest,
more. I'll take 5. You can give me your top 5 moments so far.
For me, during the race, we have 2 cars. Every time we can do a good start and score or get an extra position, I'm happy. If end of race we get points, we're happy. I follow the car 2, so Joe. So for me, anything that he's able to do during the race or during quali, this is every next race is Disneyland.
So what you're saying is your favorite time during the season was when both drivers are in the points?
In the points, hey!
Vita, I've got a little bit of a 2-part question for you as well. As a fan of F1, what circuits are you looking forward to for the rest of the year? And then for Alfa Romeo personally, if you have any particular circuits that the team is looking forward to.
I don't have a specific preference. I think we know, let's say, on which circuits our car should behave a bit better. You will see when you watch the race.
I can't wait.
I have, as a fan, I have my personal, maybe more emotional connections to some tracks. That
Which
means
ones?
something
Out of
for
curiosity.
me. When I was, I think 15, I went to my first Formula One race. Well, that was long overdue, if you ask me. But it was Nürburgring, and I really miss that circuit just because it was, I think, 2007. It was one of those races when turn 1 it was raining, and then no one could hold it in.
For any car fan, not just F1, but for any car fan, anybody who's interested in cars, the ring is like the place that you want to go. That's exactly where you want to go. The green hell, as it's called.
It's an absolutely amazing track, and I was very happy that this was my first race that I witnessed. I was very lucky. And then I have, maybe I'm one of the few, but I have special feelings for Spa because it was also the first race where I went to after I joined Alfa Romeo. And it's a very intense track emotionally also
it serves up some great races.
Great races, but also bad stories.
Oh yeah, I think back to 2012 when there was that huge grid crash at Spa.
What about 2021 where they got like 1 or 2 racing laps and everyone got like half points last year?
I mean, for me, 2019 is the worst memory. When Antoine Aubert had his crash and Juan Manuel Correa. So it's a track that, I like and I hate for what it's doing.
Yeah, I have similar feelings for Japan.
I feel like everyone we talk to is a big Spa fan. I mean, before you joined, we were talking to Katarina. She was on her way to the Circuit de Barcelona, and she was saying how awesome it is, and we should go. And I said, well, if there's one track, where should we go? She said, you should go to Spa. And so I think, our goal is to make it to Spa, make it to Monaco, definitely try and make it to Vegas next year because that will be great. So we're definitely going to try and do all of those. But, Spa, it's just at the perfect time. Miami was too bad because, like I said, it was Mother's Day weekend, and I struggled. I was home for Mother's Day. I'm trying to get my mom into Formula One, but it's a little bit challenging to get my mother into it. She loved watching. She said it a couple times, like the race was a little bit boring. And I said, admittedly, Miami, the first part of the race, the first like 41 laps were kind of boring, and then the last, once the safety car got deployed, it became a little bit faster. But man, I just struggled to get my mother watching F1 to the same way that I do.
I have invested 30 years of my life trying to make my parents like Formula One, and I have zero success. I don't know if it's possible. I don't know any person who managed to do it. But I think Formula One is just something that you either love from the beginning, or it's quite difficult to explain to people.
So speaking of trying to get new fans involved, or just people involved in the sport in general, I know that this has been a bit of like a disconnect between F1 and a female audience and just female involvement in the sport in general. From your perspective, you've been successful in getting involved, but is there anything that, Formula One as an organization can do to try to attract more of a female audience, or more of female involvement in the sport, be it racing team members like engineers like yourself, or actual drivers? Because I know we've had a handful of female F1 drivers, but by and large, the vast majority have been men. So do you think that there can be anything done, or do you think they're doing a good job of it? Or I don't know, I'm just curious to hear your perspective on it.
Yeah, I think having a driver, having more engineers, of course, helps, because it also changes a little bit the type of conversations that we're having, the questions during the interviews, the general mood. I think you can imagine that if you would have a 50-50 mix, probably it would look a bit different. For me, I think what has been done so far in the last couple of years is already a step in a good direction. I think we just need to continue down this path and try to involve more girls that are already interested. Maybe at a young age, they're
at the grassroots level.
Yeah, exactly, and just kind of show them what else is there, how can you get involved. If they are interested in karting, then organize some more events where they can try to drive the car, when they can try to visit the Formula One event itself.
Yeah.
I think because I don't know, from my personal perspective, as a little girl who liked cars and who liked F1 and didn't really have like parents who were as big of a fan, or not a fan at all, as me, I was always like hesitating to ask a question, or to go somewhere, or to get involved in a conversation. So I think just helping to unlock that interest will already help.
Yeah, just generally more openness in the community for that sort of thing. Yeah, no, that's really interesting.
Do you think we'll see a female F1 driver at any time in the future?
I hope we will, but we need more. I think we need more women in lower categories that are
so in the lower formulas.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because in the sport of Formula One, obviously, especially with the Drive to Survive too, and with Toto being such a big personality on that program, his wife, Susie Wolf, obviously has some really awesome racing pedigree. She raced at Silverstone in a free practice one in a Williams. So, and then we had Claire Williams. Obviously, she was the head of the Williams team for a while too. So it seems as though we're kind of in this generation where, the more notoriety that it's getting, and I think, and not to put a lot of it on the Drive to Survive, but I think just in general, any streaming service was going to pick up Formula One and make it big. It could have been a UK based one. It could have been a US based one. And they could dramatize it or not, but I think that's definitely going to push this in the right direction and get people like us who were involved, but now we're like super passionate about it and really love watching every single thing. We don't really listen to the drama as much. We listen more to like what's actually happening in free practice. What are you guys saying? Talking to folks like you inside the actual sport to learn more. I think as like more of that comes out, it's just going to be a natural, wow, this is really interesting. Like you said, as a little girl, parents didn't even know really what it was, right? And it's kind of hard to get them. You said it's a 30-year battle to get them involved. And now you've got, our generation of folks that are super passionate about it. It's no longer what is Formula One, watching it on tapes. I think, it's positive for the entire sport. And I guess what would be your message if you had one to those folks, or to anybody trying to get into Formula One, but specifically because of the underrepresentation of females? Like, what would your message be to them to encourage them to keep pushing?
Just do it.
Head down.
Very, very Kimmy-esque answer.
Very Nike-based answer.
I have learned from the best.
Yes.
No, but to be honest, there is no, as you said, if you like something, you need to do it. If you're asking yourself if you should do it, but do it anyway. I don't see. I think it's very easy to start questioning your own decisions and desires, and think, is it the right path? Do I have a good chance? I mean, you will never know if you had a chance or not if you don't go for it. I know, of course, it's difficult if you're not from Europe, or if you do not have like a support network, or if you're coming from a very different background. But I mean, in my school there was no specialization on like mathematics or physics.
Mhm.
My school was language school, and in Russia motorsport didn't exist back then. So to me, if you have a really strong passion for something, and you just feel at the age of, I don't know, 10, 15, that you want to be in a certain sport, or you want to be in a certain industry, I don't see why not. Anything is possible.
Yeah. No, and you're right. And honestly, Formula One is such like it has roots in engineering, math. It's moving even more towards like data, technology, coding, and all that stuff. And like even in the United States, we're seeing, a big push for females in what we call STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, right? Because there's underrepresentation just even in those categories of normal course of business. And I think because F1 is you described it in one of your most recent interviews, it's such like a small community, and there's not a lot of opportunities to even crack into it, right? So if you have a really small base to break into and underrepresentation in the key fields that need to happen, I think you're just going to see a total revolution in the next 10, 15, 20 years of people who came up studying this. Now they're seeing how popular F1 is. They want to really get into it, and the smartest people now are like yourself are in there, and you're just going to have all these people that are really fighting to get into it because they love it, they're passionate about it, and I think it's something that we're super excited to see. Do you like Danica Patrick when she's doing her race previews? Do you guys have her, or is that just for us in the States?
To be honest, I haven't seen her in the last couple of seasons, so I cannot.
She's been doing some commentary for at least for like when we broadcast in the United States. We do get the Sky Sports broadcast, so we get like Martin Brundle's grid walks, which are a near and dear to our heart. Watching all of those, but we've gotten we've gotten some Danica Patrick commentary for the U.S. races. I think it's more for COTA, for Miami, and I think probably for Vegas. But yeah. So
yeah, I think I probably saw her on the screen, but to be honest, during Sunday, if it was like a before race, we were probably busy with some other things. Yeah. So I think I saw her on the screen, but I didn't hear anything that she was saying.
Vida, thank you so much for coming on the podcast this week and talking about your experience in F1 and all things Alfa Romeo, and we just have had an awesome conversation. So thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me, and I hope that our both drivers are going to be in the points.